It's Greg Torres. I'm in Laboiteaux Woods Nature Center. This is another one of Cincinnati's great parks here. They have a great nature center and some naturalists here that work here. I wanted to hike this forest, mostly because it's springtime. The canopy is not out yet, and that means spring ephemeral flowers. In our ecosystems here, and the temperate forests of North America, there's a small window of time when the trees haven't put out their leaves yet, and yet the plants on the forest floor are in full bloom. They're trying to take advantage of this narrow window of time where the sunlight is reaching the forest floor. In that brief period, they do all of their life cycle. They put out their leaves to gather energy, they put out their flowers to reproduce, they set seed, and then they go dormant. Those are spring ephemeral flowers here. There's a number of them, and they're all quite beautiful. I think a lot of them need more attention. There are native natural heritage, and oftentimes people are completely unaware of them. I think the brevity of their life during the springtime is part of that. I also think we just haven't talked about them. Very interesting plants. Some of the most amazing flowers that we have in North America occurred during this time period. So that's what I'm doing. I'm out here. Earlier in the week, I'm in conservation land management, and we worked on this trail corridor, clearing back a lot of the honeysuckle, because it's pretty bad here. You see behind me, it's basically this whole green wall behind me. So we have to remove a lot of that. You can see behind me on the trail corridor, we pushed it back pretty far, hoping to allow some of the programs to have access and just better visibility overall through the forest. Again, that green is all honeysuckle above us, just leafing out. Now, if this plant, if you look above us, the trees aren't leafing out yet. The plants need, at this time of year, they need that sunlight to hit the forest floor to intercept it and create energy through photosynthesis. If the honeysuckle starts leafing out and the plants on the forest floor can't have access to that light, they are unable to produce energy. They are unable to, over years, reproduce and successfully seed out. And eventually those colonies dwindle down until the flowers become smaller and smaller, the plants become smaller and smaller, and eventually they just disappear. So when we have a stand of honeysuckle like you see behind me, there's very few things growing under there. And if it's not managed quickly, a lot of what is good underneath there will disappear. I'm excited because some of the local residents around here have taken action to start removing honeysuckle and some of the other invasive species. So as a consequence, we're starting to see some wildflowers rebounding where the honeysuckle was removed. And as I'm hiking these trails, I came across a really spectacular display of Virginia bluebells, which I wanted to show off because they're beautiful. You can see the volunteers have removed a lot of honeysuckle. There's still a patch of it in front of us. And all around us, they've kind of cut back some along the edge here. So what's happened though, as I was explaining, some of the honeysuckle prohibits some of our native wildflowers from coming up. So a lot of the Virginia bluebells, which you're seeing here, are kind of sequestered right along the trail edge where they were still able to get some sunlight at part of the day. So this plant, there's a number of them, and they're just stunning, stunning blooms, right? Look at these. And this plant is called Virginia bluebells, Mertensia virginica. It's named after an old botanist, Karl Mertens or something, a German guy. But anyway, this is one of North America's beautiful flowers, and I love it. It travels underneath the ground via a rhizome, so it'll form colonies and it'll readily seed out. And it especially likes hillsides like this, so that the seeds can kind of just roll down the hill and eventually get established. There's some real great colonies of this, particularly in Bender Mountain, which is part of the Western Wildlife Corridor on the west side of Cincinnati. But since the volunteers here in Laboiteaux Woods have removed a lot of the honeysuckle around, this plant is actually starting to move down the hill and starting to get better established, not just along this perimeter, but actually into the forest where it belongs, because now it's able to get enough sunlight. Interesting pieces about this plant. The flowers are gorgeous, right? They're fused petals that end up being tubular at the base here. This is great for a number of insects with really long tongues, like butterflies or maybe even some bees. We have long-tongued bees in particular around here. Look at the color variation on this flower itself. All of them actually in this colony. The flowers that are open are bluish, and they're advertising actively to the insects that they are receptive and ready for reproduction. The flowers that are not open and still buds, they're pink. And they're advertising to insects that they are not open and receptive or offering any nectar at this time. What's interesting is after the blue flowers are pollinated, they will eventually turn to pink also, signaling to insects, I am done with pollination, I have completed my reproductive strategy, and it is not worth visiting me at this time. But I love these flowers. They're gorgeous and they bloom for quite a while. It's April now, and they'll be blooming up until May. Some of the flower heads, they are reminiscent to me of like a Phillips head screwdriver. But again, a wonderful colony of Virginia bluebells all through here. And it's all because volunteers have stepped up to help us remove some of the invasive species in this forest. And what's really great is now at this nature center, kids can experience these great wildflowers and the insects that are attracted to them, and they can see the glories of our natural history here in the eastern part of the United States. Again, Virginia bluebells.